Welcome to the Dog Ate My Strategy Show. In the next 30 minutes, we will help you switch off, bring you entertainment, and chat to some specifically chosen guests who will help you realise that you are more capable than you will ever know. In each episode, we offer practical ideas for reshaping your career, enhancing your skills, and building higher self-belief. Whether you're stuck, coasting, or craving a new direction, this show helps you silence negativity and challenge your current mindset with a blend of inspiration, positivity, and fun moments. So get ready for real stories, real mindset shifts, and real change. And welcome to the third episode of the Dog Ate My Strategy Show. On today's show, we have the amazing Karen Dunbar. So keep listening. This is something you will definitely not want to miss. First of all, I'd like to thank listeners who switched the podcast on today, found us on Spotify, Apple or Amazon Music. So to new people who've joined, thank you very much. We have a couple of episodes that you might also want to listen to. And to returning listeners, thank you as well. That's great. It's great that you're coming back. Hopefully you're enjoying the show. So before I introduce our very glamorous panel, I just want to tell people what's going on. So far, we've got listeners across the 4 continents. So Europe, Asia, North America and South America. So we're looking for Antarctica next. That'd be interesting to get somebody listening in there. And we're in the top 100 shows in Chile and Vietnam. So thank you for people who are listening in Chile and Vietnam. And also Japan, we've got quite a few listeners there, so thank you. And thank you to Marion from Austria, who sent me a lovely message in LinkedIn, really enjoying the show, and asked me whether we could do part of the show in German, which might be slightly difficult. The best language I can speak is French, and that's probably hello, goodbye, and can I have a room with a bath, which is going to be no use to anybody. Let me introduce the panel. We have from Glastonbury, David Johnson.
Hi, Gary. Good to be here again.
And then we have Emma B from Bath.
Hello, everyone from the sunny southwest of England.
And then Paul Raver the Raven from Brighton.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show.
So it's been a few weeks. So what I want to know, team, is what have you been up to? So let's start with Emma. Emma, what happened over the Easter period with you?
Oh, well, I headed off to Italy. So I travelled to Naples and I've always wanted to go to Pompeii. It's always been on my bucket list. So I can definitely say that I did that this year. Herculaneum, Pompeii, Naples, beautiful weather and delicious food. So lovely and relaxing.
Did you try the gelato ice cream as well while you were there?
Definitely has to be eaten. My other half loves ice cream, so we had all sorts of desserts. It was great.
Excellent. So Herculaneum, when I went there, you probably can talk about this, where it covered in a landslide of mud. And it was worse, it had the worst impacts than actual Vesuvius. I think it killed or buried more people. I'm doing this from memory here, Emma, so you might have to update my 10-year-old out-of-date knowledge.
No, you're pretty spot on. It was pumice stone, but it turned into cement and concrete in Herculaneum, more loose and easy to dig in Pompeii.
It was quite interesting. When I went there, there's part of it which looked like some kind of pizza shop, and I think there were like half a bike which had been at the pizza shop, and I thought, is this the first Uber Eats? You know, it's called. It's like there's a pizza place and there's a bike. Would there been a man on the bike who was delivering around Naples at that time?
Definitely would have been on a chariot. Would have had chariot racing to see who could get there the fastest. Hence why they had their speed bumps on the road to slow them all down. Maybe that's what it was, Gary.
Them Romans invented everything, didn't they? They were there before us all. Okay, so thank you, Emma. So David Johnson, what have you been up to over the Easter period?
Nothing quite as elaborate as and exotic as going out to Italy. Easter very much UK based, but did actually find my way down to the National Maritime Aquarium in Plymouth. A great place, actually. Terrific day out for anyone who's in that neck of the woods. And we were really, really chuffed because we saw a presentation from the Ocean Conservancy Trust where they were talking about the loss of seagrass. I mean, it's all all good educational stuff, and now 90% of it's gone, and that's horrendous. The real excitement is when Paul Cox gave a presentation. He's a chief executive from the Sharks Trust. Did you know that sharks can live with a lifespan of 245 to 575 years old, and they've been around for over is it 400 million years? They're hugely successful, and here we find now, potentially, there's about a third of them that are part of an endangered species. About 100, I think 170 different species of sharks, including rays, etc., etc. It really was interesting, but fascinating. A great day out.
Excellent. So it always reminds me of Jaws. It's probably in my top three films is Jaws. And, people go, oh, well, the shark looks really rubber now when you look back. But that film has so much tension in it. And I can still feel the tension. If I'm watching it now, if I decide to watch it from the start, if it's on one of the Sky TVs, that first bit
Uh,
where the girl goes out swim still gets me. It's still tense, before the shark actually attacks. And I think it's an absolutely great film. And I have a fascination with sharks as well, David.
On those opening notes, that whoa, boom, phenomenal. The how that
Yeah,
sort of brings the fear and gets to the basic instinct of what's going on. And yeah, I mean, sharks. I'm sure they really have ended up being misrepresented by this aspect, because they are hugely important, because they're at the pinnacle of the pyramid, and they're hugely important to getting the right balance of species within the sea area. So, but yeah, Jaws,
yeah.
terrific film, terrific.
Yeah, so thank you, David. Another 3 seconds of the Jaws music and we'll be paying royalties. So I'm just glad that you only did 3 seconds. Otherwise, I would be chased by the John Williams Foundation. I'd just like to say, there's a fantastic documentary, I think it might have been Disney, on 50 years of Jaws. And what's surprising about Jaws, the film, is they never set out to make it in the way they were actually made. They had more footage of the shark attacking in the early scenes, and because they had trouble with the shark, they tested it in, I think, in like hot water and big swimming pools. When they put it in cold water, especially when it had salt in, they had a real issue with the shark. So what they had
Yeah.
to do is think about how could they actually make the first part of the film without using the shark so much, until they could figure out how to get the shark to work in the sea. So it's just
Mm.
amazing how things happen like that, and just alone that mechanical issue made such a brilliant film. Anyway, talking of sharks, should I say, Paul Raven. So did you do anything very interesting over the Easter holidays?
I went to Krakow in southern Poland, a very beautiful city, lots of interesting things to do. And I did go down to one of the regional salt mines, and you walk down 430 steps. There is other access. You get down to the bottom, and basically, it was a working mine. Outside the miners' working hours, they would start to chip away and do these sculptures, and they've got a replica of the final supper with Jesus and the disciples. They've got a statue of John Paul II there. They've got a whole chapel that they've built out of rock crystal, which you can now have services, weddings, whatever you like. But the big issue was coming back up. No, I didn't have to walk. They put us in what was the original workers' lifts, which doesn't sound too bad until you find out it's basically a free story of wire steel cages where you can see out below the people below you. If you're in the top cage, you can see the two cages below you. There's no electricity, so for about 2-3 minutes you go up this lift shaft in total darkness. Health and safety is, I would say, very much optional, and when you get to the top it is a relief, but I would recommend it as a visit because it is absolutely fascinating what they did down below. And basically they did it all out of their own work hours. They built this chapel, they've done all these monuments and everything, and it is absolutely amazing. The art is unbelievable down there. So if you're ever in that region, I would recommend it as somewhere to visit.
Excellent. That sounds really good. The lift shaft, though, sounds like something Disneyland should try to create a ride out of, Paul. So that reminds me, I did see a holiday. This would interest you, Paul. I think it was just outside York, and you could go stay in a 1980 nuclear war bunker for a week.
That's
From memory, it says something like experience food rationing. So I think you'd probably have tin of spam, powdered egg, and maybe something else that were unappealing on a daily basis. And it said that you'd have to live with recycled water.
yeah.
So I'm hoping that Yorkshire Water had nothing to do with this, and some private contractor has come in and worked out how to recycle all the water in this bunker. And then I also remember it says, because there's no electricity, just like where you were, Paul. And then it says, pass time by reading some great literary classics like War and Peace by Tolstoy, The Carpetbagger by Harold Robbins, and The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, which
Light,
are
light
probably
stuff then.
yeah, great books, but probably the most top 3 boring books ever written as well. So,
War and
it
Peace is good. I've read that.
is it? Right, okay.
Yeah.
So if anybody fancies that, Paul, it could be right up your strata, the York visit in a Cold War bunker. I'll send you the address later on.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, everybody. One thing that did happen, we had an email. This came from Jane, so this might make Emma B feel better. Jane says she scored 0 points in the quiz we did called Is There Life Beyond Spreadsheets? Emma
Hooray!
managed to pull out 1 point right at the end. And she says, so quite long, so I'm summarising. She says, the worst thing is that she was wildly out on the cost of drinks. And she said she'd realised that she's always complaining. Oh, no, sorry, her partner is always complaining how expensive it is on a night out. Now, Jane thought that he just wanted to stay in, he couldn't be bothered going out. But she's realised now that it is quite expensive drinking out. And she said that she thought here we go, Emma, this might make you feel better, for a glass of large red wine, it were about £4, given that it's £7 in the supermarket. And all I can say is she feels more educated, and the dog ate my strategy show, bringing harmony to relationships. So there you go.
Excellent.
More
Excellent.
than you expected out of Life Beyond Spreadsheets, fixing relationships. Okay, so we have an absolute fantastic guest coming up. I'm going to introduce her in a minute, but keep tuned in. This is absolutely brilliant. Well, today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Karen Dunbar. Now, I hope you sat down because there's a long list I need to go through of Karen's achievements. So, comedian, actress, writer, someone who's appeared on TV, radio, theatre, film, and even video games, where she won a BAFTA award. Karen first became a household name through Chewing the Fat and The Karen Dunbar Show. But what really fascinated me about Karen is how she continually reinvents herself over a long career in a real tough industry. And I thought that having Karen on for multiple reasons, and one that I thought about is, even though Karen's from the entertainment industry, there's huge parallels between what Karen's done and business careers. About adaptability, about taking risks, about handling doubts, and most of all about stepping outside your comfort zone. So it's a massive privilege to welcome Karen Dunbar to today's show. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Gary. David, lovely to be here.
Yeah, great to see you, Karen.
And alongside Karen, I also have David Johnson, who is part of the regular The Dog Ate My Strategy panel. So, Karen, thank you for coming along. So let's start. Let's just go back a little in time. I was going to say back to the 80s, David, but I don't want people switching off thinking we're going back to the nice and cheesy story. So we're back to the 80s. We're not going to talk about cheese this time. And Karen, when you left school, what were your plans? What were you thinking about regarding career?
I left school 1987. I was 16 and I thought I will go to London and conquer the world. That was the strategy I had. I'll go to London and become a superstar. And I did. I went to London and I came back 3 weeks later with a bin bag full of washing to my mum and said, "I'm sorry, can I get back in the house?" And she was very gracious and said yes and did my washing. So when I left school, I had no real concrete, or let's say feasible plans, doable, workable plans. I had some real, I don't know if it was airy fairy, but I certainly had some idea that I was going to be successful and I was going to be on television. That was actually probably shorthand for success or for entertainment. I was going to be on television. I didn't know what I wanted to do on television, how I wanted to be on television, but I was going to do it. And I just had that feeling of that without any plans. So that's the truth of that. No plans at all, but a sense of I will do this.
Excellent. So what were your first step then to get into TV? Did you do comedy clubs? Did you sort of interact with people through music? I'm just wondering what that stepping stone was to getting that dream of getting onto television.
Mm. It was a strange trajectory and one that I don't think you could say, oh, well, if I do this, A, B, and C, that'll get me onto television. But I did. The sort of roots of the entertainment road for me was I worked in a bar, which in 1990, so I was 19, and my boss said to me, "Karen, there's a new thing coming out called karaoke, and you can sing a bit. I want you to host it." I was a barmaid. And I said, "Okay." So I started to host karaoke and I was absolutely rotten, utterly cack. I had no chat at all. I sung Top of the World and then I said, "The next singer is Jean. Please welcome Jean." And then Jean sang and then I sung, Yesterday Once More and then said, "The next singer is John. Please welcome John." I mean, that was what I did. However, karaoke itself was the star. So it got busier and busier, and I got more confident. And they put it on 3 nights a week, and I got more and more confident. I was at that point I was being paid £2.10 an hour before tax. And so they were very happy for me to host the karaoke because the place was packed and I was as cheap as chips to host it. So in the hosting the karaoke for 3 nights a week, I started to get some patter, some banter, more confidence in handling an audience, more kind of comebacks as well. And from that, I went on to start my own business. I actually got a loan from the Prince's Trust, which I'll just confess now, I never paid that loan back. I never get paid back. What I ran away. What I did do was, years later, when my success came through television, Princess Trust asked me to be an ambassador for them, and I said, "Oh yes, I will. I absolutely will." So I did a lot of stuff for them to try and pay back my loan. And the loan that I got was for audio equipment for a PA system. Now that was in 1992. I can tell you, I've still got. I bought a pair of PV speakers that I've still got that still work that are hooked up in the room through there to my DJ equipment. Anyway, and I started to do cabaret. Now, cabaret means that I was the turn in the pubs, and so I would sing in the pubs. And I did that for a good few years. And then I moved up to Glasgow and I hosted karaoke and I started to DJ as well. And I did that for about 7 years. So by the time and then I went to an audition, and this is a very shorthand version, so please ask me anything in the middle of that. I bumped into an old school friend who said, "Karen, I've been thinking about you all day. My friends just went to open auditions at the Comedy Unit." And I said, "What's the Comedy Unit?" And they said, "They're the production company that made Rabsy Nesbitt. And they're auditioning today, all this week." And I kept thinking, "You should go." And I said to him, "I've never been to an audition. I'm not trained in anything." And I said, "I wouldn't know what to do." And he said, "Well, I'm just telling you, you should go." And I came home and I phoned 192 Directory Inquiries and I got the number for the Comedy Unit and I phoned them and I said, "I'd like to take one of your audition slots, please." And they said, "We've got one left on Thursday. Come along at 2 o'clock." And I went and I auditioned for them and I thought, "Oh, I'll never hear from them again," because it was like Flashdance. Do you know what I mean? They were faces like Easter Island statues just looking at me. But I came away from that and they called me the next day and said, "Come in and have a chat with us." And they then put me into the radio show Chewing the Fat, which was on Radio Scotland. And then Chewing the Fat was commissioned for another radio series. And while we were doing that, it was commissioned for television. And the next thing you know, overnight success after 10 years. Well, it was about 7 years. I was on TV. And I was still hosting karaoke. So I would be hosting the karaoke and Jean would be up singing Crazy by Patsy Cline. And then I would turn the TV over and go, I'm on TV. And I would be on the television and all the people in the karaoke were saying, put that off. We're not interested in that. Big Tommy's going up to sing, My Heart Will Go On. That's what we're interested in. So it was a good grounding for me, still working in the pubs.
Did you ever go back then? We went back to karaoke. Did you go back to the original style when people had sort of seen you develop and they might have not seen those like early days of karaoke? Did you go on for the laugh and just go, and here's Jean singing Land of Hope and Glory, and followed by David Johnson, who's going to come on and sing We Are the Champions. Did you ever
Right.
feel like giving a real bland view of yourself?
Yeah. I mean, as you can imagine, in Glasgow, there weren't a lot of women called Jean singing Land of Hope and Glory, Gary. So, no, I mean, I still love a karaoke and I'll go in and belt it out sometimes at the karaoke. And I've went back to DJing. That's a huge love of mine. And so, during the lockdown, I started to DJ digitally. And I thought, if we ever get out of this lockdown, I'm going to go back to DJing in the clubs. And so I've done that.
Go back, Karen, then. How did you cope with your nerves? Did you start to feel very comfortable and confident when you realised that you had this real skill for making people laugh? Or worry every time before you go out, you're thinking, oh God, I'm going to throw up and get really nervous?
No, I mean, Gary, it's a roll of the dice about that, those sort of nerves. I mean, I was on in a comedy club last week, and it was some new stuff, so fair enough, that's why I was nervous. But the nerves I had were disproportionate to the event. It was a great comedy club, The Stand in Glasgow. It was a charity night. So there's always, bon and me at a charity night because you're doing it for nothing, and it's all for a good cause. But the nerves that I had were absolutely excruciating. And yet I could have went on and did some old stuff and not felt nervous at all. So I don't think there's a way for me through nerves, round nerves, to avoid nerves. I think there is only being with them. And it doesn't really matter what I'm nervous about or what that, it is being with. There's no way. I've not found any shortcut. Positive affirmations or chanting mantras or anything. It really is. It's just being with the nerves and almost surfing the wave of the nerves. Because for me, there's no way around it.
Yeah. And when you start to perform, do those nerves start to disappear pretty quick when you're sort of thinking this is landing
Absolutely.
really well?
There's a strange catalyst, like if I use even the metaphor of walking through the theatrical curtain, you walk through the curtain and it catalyzes. I don't know if that's a real word, but it transforms into a kind of performative energy, a creative energy. 9 times out of 10, there has been the odd time where I have been, I don't know if self-aware is the correct way to put it, but I've been not in the show or the piece. I've still been in the nerves, and that's horrible. And again, there's no way for me to avoid that either. There's no shortcut through that. You just have to, that's the way it is that night, and you just have to be with it. But that's not often. And I'm very grateful for that magical catalyst that happens.
Yeah. I'm quite anxious because a lot of us audience obviously work in business, and I do talks, and lots of people say to me, how do you get past your nerves? And it's like, you don't know what's happening in the body while I'm talking. While I'm talking, I might appear okay, but I still struggle with nerves. But there's a part where as soon as you start talking, it starts to disappear. And as soon as you get to a good point, in the first few minutes, wherever it is, comedy or you're doing a presentation, and it's landing well, you can see people not looking at the phones or falling asleep or even walking out, may I say. That's happened once or twice to me. Then you're thinking, okay, I'm into it, and nerves tend to go. So now it's interesting to hear from you, Karen, about how to cope with nerves and that they're still there. It's just a case of, trying to cope with them. So can we go back to Chewing the Fat? So for people who haven't seen Chewing the Fat, what was your role on there? Were you just acting, or were you also writing some of the sketches?
I was acting, and I was probably what I would say is the woman I was I was the woman. So, the Tune the Fat core cast was myself and 2 other guys, Ford Kiernan and Greg Hemphill. They went on to make a show called Still Game, which actually was, played down south, so maybe some of your listeners will have heard of that. But, and there were other supporting artists as well in the cast, but we were the main 3. So if there was a sketch with 2 guys and a woman in it, I was a woman. If there was a sketch with 2 guys and 2 women, I was one of the women. And if one of the women spoke, it was me. I was the one to get paid to speak. So do you know what I mean? So, because the budget was so low for the first series of Chewing the Fat. So, it was a sketch show, a bit like the Fast Show, and, so that was my role. I only ever wrote 1 sketch for it. I didn't have confidence in writing, which didn't really make any sense because I had done 2 Edinburgh Festival shows, and I had written those. But, no, I didn't have it's not only I didn't have confidence, I wasn't that bothered about it, to be honest. I was just very happy to be, here I am. I'm gonna be, from a little kid, I was saying I'm gonna be on TV, and here I am I was 27 when we filmed Chewing the Fat, and so here I was doing it. That was enough for me.
And how did you cope with that initial bit of fame then? Because I suppose, you've earned your stripes doing all this work, and all of a sudden you're on TV, BBC Scotland. What were it
Mm.
like at first when you're going out and people recognise you and want to
Um,
come up and chat to you?
it's the strangest thing. But it's also strange in ways that you wouldn't really anticipate. One of them is thinking that I'm being recognised when I'm not. So thinking that people are looking at me saying, "There's that woman off the telly," and they're not. I mean, I remember a woman, I was in Marks& and Spencer's, and she was at the sort of meat counter, and she shouted her husband, "Derek, Derek." And I thought, "Oh, here we go." I was just gonna say, "Look, it's that woman off the telly." And Derek came over to her and she said, "Do you want mince?" So it was about what Derek wanted for his dinner. It was nothing to do with me, and I was all ready to be received. I was like happy to receive them as the graciously, and no, it's nothing to do with me. It was what cut of meat he wanted for that night. So, but I would say it took a year and a half to get used to being recognised and to be able to handle that. And again, without that sounding like a big travesty to be recognised, but it's a strange thing to sit and have a coffee with somebody and have people coming over. And so I wasn't quite sure how to cope with that, and then I learned how to, again, this sounds a wee bit airy-fairy maybe, or uppity. I actually learned that I'd kinda keep healthy physical boundaries because people just come up and go, "Oh my God," and, I mean, I was standing with an old man in the street in an embrace. I didn't know him. And I'm just standing there and he's holding me, going, "I love you, hen. I love you." And I'm like, "I don't know this man." It was great to be so popular, but at the same time, not appropriate. So I got ways to manage to like be able to shake people's hands and keep a kind of boundary and how you doing without them, especially if I was out somewhere and people were drunk. Because I was like,
Yeah.
ah. It's a lovely sort of sense of ownership because you're in their houses, you know.
Yeah.
You're in the corner of their living room and to be able to appreciate that they were excited as well. I mean, I remember seeing there's an actor called Elaine C. Smith, who was in Rab C. Nesbitt, and I was a huge fan of hers, massive. And I saw her when I was a teenager. I saw her in Marks and Spencer's in Ayr in Scotland. That's where I was brought up. I saw her in Ayr, and I was like, oh my God, that is Elaine C. Smith. And I hid behind rails of clothing, spying on her with like just absolute incredulity. I could not believe I wanted to be close to her. So if I had that experience with her, then maybe some people are having that experience with me. So it was to try and appreciate that that's what was happening, and at the same time, not have to get into their car with them and go home for dinner with them.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
suppose it's a lot worse now because of, the mobile phones and cameras
Yeah.
and selfies and people because they have to, suppose, get up really close to take a selfie, so
Well,
that must
there's a
be
way around that,
really,
Gary.
hard.
Somebody, I was in a coffee shop there and having a chat with my friend, and somebody come up and said, "Can I get a photo?" Which was great. And I said, "Yeah, give me your phone." And so they will hand me their phone, and I'll say, "Well, put it onto your camera," and I take the selfie. Better for all. I'm really good at it because I've done it loads of times. You get a much better angle. You hold it up like that. You don't got this chin, see? Hold it up like that. And they're happy with that. And then and then I can give it back to them, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Without, again, that sounding too uppity, but there are times that people want to talk again, and that's lovely, but sometimes it's just not appropriate for me. I'm with somebody. There's been times where I've maybe been talking with friends and they've been upset about something, and then somebody wants to come and say something, and you've got to just try and get the balance of that.
Yeah. Okay, so chewing the fat's a great success. It comes to an end. And then there's a gap between that and the next show. So tell me about that gap and about the Karen Dunbar show, which is obviously a big move forward for you.
Yeah, well, not so much of a gap. It was the next year we made the Karen Dunbar show, so that was the next thing I went on to. And uh, do you know, see, when I look back on it, Gary, don't mean it's a shame, but I wasn't really able to connect to the goodness of it. I was too stressed. I was too in the attachment, if you like, to the outcome of it. It's a eponymous TV show. It's my show. When people have said, you know, "What were you in?" I'll say, "The Karen Dunbar show," and they'll say, "What was that?" I'm like, "Oh, that's me." I'm like, "Oh, aye." Again, without that sounding too big-headed, but I wasn't connected to that at all. Now I look back and I'm like, "My God, that was it." You know what I mean? Made it. If it never got any better, and actually things did get better, but not in the way that I thought. It was an awful lot of pressure because although I was the woman in chewing the fat, now I was the main person in the Karen Dunbar show, and I had great supporting cast as well. And I certainly was not in every sketch, but I was in loads more than I had been before. And I remember they gave me the dossier of sketches that we were going to film over the 6 weeks, and I thought, I cannot do this. I can't do it. And my next thought, fortunately, was, well, you don't have to do it all in one go. All you have to do on the first day is that much, is this bit. And then the next day you have to do this bit. And then the next day you have to do this bit. And in between that, you might get hit by a bus and not have to do it all anyway. So it was just to get things into perspective, was you don't have to do it all. You have to do this much for one day. And that made it more manageable. But I was still too stressed and I couldn't watch myself on telly because I was too insecure and attached to the outcome. If I get this, maybe that will happen. If I get that. And do you know what I realise now is everything's always largely looking towards a sense of peace and contentment. If I win this award, I'll get this money. And if I get this money, I'll buy a big house. And if I buy a big house, I'll be comfortable. And if I'm comfortable, I'll have peace. All roads lead to Rome. It's all about peace. And sometimes I've got to remind myself, maybe you can get peace without having to win an award and buy a big house. Maybe peace is available right here, right now.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think people that do go into the roles, I've seen this in business, really struggle. And it's like they may be thinking, like I said, too much on the outcome. So maybe they're just thinking too much about the role instead of about one step at a time. What do I do today to actually help me improve what I do? What can I control today, which is going to get me there? I do think it's way that we think, and maybe it's growing up in the 70s and 80s. We must be wired in a certain way. We're thinking too many things instead of, right, I've got so many hours. What's the most constructive thing that I can do today, which is going to help me perform in whatever I'm doing?
Yeah, I'll agree to quite a lot of that, Gary. And I think there's also a much bigger picture that I wasn't aware of. And I'm certainly not saying that this is accurate, but as a layperson and looking into just the kind of way of the world and understanding a bit more about where we are as a species in latter stage capitalism, everything is about the bling. It's,
Yeah.
and now with instant access to that. And it was always about that, in the 70s and 80s, long before there was social media. There's still that, wait till I show you my holiday photos when you're at somebody's house and they've got like 3 volumes of things, and that's the beach, and that's the dinner we had,
Yeah.
and that's the seagull. And I listened to a really interesting podcast about, and the subject was, we are a status-led species. That's the species we are, without being too cynical about it. Status, having a higher status means that you'll live longer. So it's a survival instinct. But it's just how that status is garnered nowadays, let's say in the last at least 50 years. There's an awful lot of pressure to be seen to succeed, not to succeed, to be seen to be successful. It's giving myself a bit of license in that as well, rather than thinking, oh, this is some neurosis in me. This is the pool that us wee fish are swimming in.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, Karen. So the Karen Dunbar show starts. Were you writing then, or were you just
No,
being an actress in the
yeah,
script? Just
yeah.
okay.
Mainly, I never wrote anything for that either. Again, writing always felt like I would have said I'm not a writer, which is not strictly true, but I had no desire to be a writer, really. It was all about performance. And actually, do you know, I'm being unfair here because with Chewing the Fat and the Camden Bar Show, what we did have was script editing sessions. And I would sit with all of the scripts and the writers, and we would go through them and I'd say, that's too long, that needs shorter, that needs a better punchline. I would come up with it. So it was kind of co-written in a way, but I'm not looking for any claims to that. Oh, well, I co-wrote this, but a lot of the time I would be bringing a punchline, shortening it down, paraphrasing it, rephrasing things. So I was more of an editor in it, but I'm certainly involved in it.
Yeah, but I think that's a really important role. I think the quality control, wherever it comes from, is needed.
Mm.
When you do a piece of work, you want to put it past people, and you want people to give feedback and honest feedback. And if it's too long or it's not giving the message, then I think people need to know that. As long as it's done in a constructive way, in a way that takes that body of work and improves it, then I think
Mm.
everybody involved in that is so important.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the end of part one of our interview with Karen Dunbar. Part two will be coming along in the next few weeks. Well, that was absolutely fantastic, that interview and the time we spent with Karen. So we put this into two parts. So this is only part one. And the second bit is even more unbelievable and entertaining. It's beyond belief. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Paul and Emma just to give me your insights and just tell the audience what you gleaned from that fantastic interview with Karen Dunbar. So, Emma?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that I thought about was expect the unexpected in life. I think we always assume or think we're going to go in a particular direction, and then all of a sudden that doesn't happen. We get sidetracked, something happens, and we end up in a better place, but completely and utterly unexpected. So I really enjoyed that, and I got from that to be open to try new things, to go into a different direction, and to really try different people, places, and opportunities that come your way.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma. So, what about you, Paul? What did you glean from that?
There are three things that I kind of picked up on. First was the incredible varied career that the lady had. She started off doing karaoke, and then she was always going to get into television was her aim. Again, like Emma said, it wasn't just that fixed, this is what the career going to be. It kind of diversified into many different parts of the entertainment industry. On a more negative side, I found it, even now, particularly in the era of social media and camera phones everywhere, how I felt that actors and actresses aren't prepared for success if that show you're on becomes the hottest ticket in town, or you're not. It doesn't come across that people are prepared for being recognized in the supermarket or in the street and how to handle that. And I remember in other interviews that I've listened to how actors suddenly went, we suddenly realized that this show was big because we were going down the shopping mall and suddenly we got mobbed. And I do find it quite amazing that the industry doesn't seem to really prepare actors and actresses. They go, oh, yes, you'll be really great and everything, and this show's going to be great, but they don't prepare them for what happens after the show and kind of gives them kind of help around that, or that's what it seems like. And finally, I found her definition of what she thought peace was going to be and what it turned out to be interesting because she kind of went, it was going to be, I get the award, that leads to the big house, which will then give me peace because I'll be comfortable when, and then in reality, I got the impression that, yes, she got the award, got the big house, but that didn't lead to the peace that she was expecting. And peace may not be that successful career path. The peace could come from something completely different. So that's what I kind of took away from it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think Karen picked some of that up in the second part about really sitting down and thinking about, what you want out of life. We see it in our industry is I want to be FD or I want to be a leader, and people get there and then you just see them so unhappy. They're going to constant meetings, traveling a lot, and for all the money in the world they're earning, it's like, what has their life become? And some of them go and do different things. I know a couple of leaders who've like had high level jobs and they've gone off and become Pilates teachers. They've been in the industry 15, 20 years and thought, do you know what? This doesn't make me happy. David, what about you?
Yeah, the thing that was interesting, there was so much in there. It really is packed, and definitely come along for the second session because the first session's great, but the second session just helps top and tail it. But the thing that really struck me was, especially when she was helping with doing the scripts, is you've really got to get things right, and more often than not, you get less is more, and it's choosing and knowing the right words and the power of the words, and being very focused on that to really get your message across. And that in communication is huge. The other aspect is how when the karaoke was introduced, and how people didn't want the telly, they wanted the karaoke, they wanted to be participating, they wanted to get involved, and that was so encouraging to hear. Because again, I think post COVID, increasingly, I think we really need to be ideally seeing that happen more and more to get people to get us all in a better mindset. So there's so many huge things that and her experience that she relayed to us was terrific. Terrific lady.
Yeah, I think one thing that struck me, and there's lots of things in there, is you've got a lot to contribute. And what Karen says is, I wasn't a script writer, but I listened in intently and just thinking of one or two things that might change it, might make it better, carried
Yeah.
through into, each episode. And I think that's true in any kind of role you do is you've got something to contribute. It's just a case of when you have the opportunity to do that and not be scared of thinking, oh, these people are more experienced around me. They probably are. But you might bring something they cannot bring, and you might see something that they're not seeing as well. And that's really important. It's a bit criminal when you see something that they don't and you take silence as an option, because you just voicing an opinion or giving some experience could really change a situation very quickly. So great. I thought that fantastic. So part two. So go on, David.
I was just coming in, and this is, and there's a great Irish philosopher that covered this, a guy called Edmund Burke, and one of the things he said, and I think this will come out later as well, on action. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Now, then it goes to what you were saying. It's be prepared to stand up and say something, because that little that you think it's only going to be a little could be huge. So
Yeah,
there's so
that's for
much
sure.
by making sure you really engage and be prepared to stand up and make your point.
Excellent. Well, thank you, team, for those insights as well. The second episode of Karen Dunbar, which is Never Stand Still, is going to be out in 3 weeks' time. It is an absolute belter. If you enjoyed this, you'll really, really enjoy the next one. So, Emma, we are getting a few emails in, so could you please give out the email number for us?
Yeah, so the email address is dog8strategy@gmail.com. That's dog8strategy@gmail.com, and the details can be found in the episode area underneath.
Excellent. So, first of all, thank you, team, for joining us today and telling us all about your Easter holidays. And I'm sure there's some good ideas for our audience out there. And most of all, thank you, listeners, for tuning in and listening to us either on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Music. If you like the episodes, please do subscribe and follow us. So thank you, everybody. And you'll hear us in 3 weeks when we bring back the Dog Ate My Strategy show.